Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hi there!
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, it's just like last week, but with music. We're back with the 2005 remake of the 2001 musical remake of the 1968 Mel Brooks classic, The Producers.
Let's assume for a moment that you are a dishonest man.
Assume away.
Under the right circumstances, a producer could make more money with a flop than he could with a hit.
You bloody little genius!
I want everything I've ever seen in the movies!
All we have to do is find the worst play ever written.
Max.
What?
This is it!
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Nathan Lane.
Send me to the moon, you animals!
I love you!
Matthew Broderick.
Max, she's fantastic. I've never felt this way before.
Uma Thurman.
Remember when Ula danced?
Yeah.
Ula, dance again!
God bless Sweden.
And Will Ferrell.
Ah! Stand still! How can I shoot you if you keep moving? Who? You've already had your toilet break.
I'm not going into the toilet. I'm going into show business.
All right, Andy, here it is. Now, I know I said I watched this movie more than the original producers, and I do it for the music, and that really stood out to me this time. Just give me the hot take. What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. I'll say this much. I didn't dislike it as much as my original opinion of the original, the producers. And I don't like it as much as my recent viewing of the original, the producers.
Well, that's good news. That's good news. That feels good to me. So let's recap. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? We're in the movies and their remakes series, and we are obviously talking about Mel Brooks, the producers.
Right, which is the remake of the original from 1968, and that's kind of the overarching series. We're looking at films right now from 1968, celebrating their 50th anniversary. And this is a 1968, a remake of a 1968 film. So here we sit. We
are in it. Now, I don't know. I probably watched this in a little bit too much too close a proximity to watching the film last week. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I really enjoyed my experience with the movie last week. And watching this one, it just felt more like a retread to me. And I know that's not the reality of the film because I've watched it so many times that I always have a much better experience with it, when I sit down and watch it with the family.
Yeah, when you're not watching it right after the other one.
Yes. And so I think
remembering and seeing all those differences.
Exactly. I think that hurt my experience. But one of the things that you caught in a review of the film from Stephanie Zacharek, I wonder if we could open with that, if you would read that, because that is absolutely, I think, captures my experience of watching the film this time. And if you could do it in Stephanie Zacharek's voice.
Does she talk like the lighting designer? Keep it snappy, keep it gay. The Producers is essentially a filmed version of a stage play in which none of the characters' expressions or line readings have been scaled down to make sense on screen. Every gesture is played out as if the actors were 20 feet away in real life, which means that by the time the performers are magnified on the big screen, they're practically sitting in your lap. The effect is something like watching a 3D IMAX film without the special glasses.
What'd you think of that?
I think it's an interesting reaction to it, and not having seen it on the big screen, I can't speak completely to that. But I did make a note as I watched this. What is the line between a big comedic performance and being over the top? Where is that? Because I feel like it's a really fine line. I think that in the original film, we have some fantastic big comedic performances. I think all of the performers here are doing big comedic performances. And yes, it's, the bulk of the cast came from the stage, so it does feel like they may be pulling that from the stage. Watching it, though, I largely didn't have a problem with it because it just felt like big comedy. But I can totally see how some people would say, wow, this is just over the top. These performances are huge. Nothing is scaled back. And maybe that is something that I pulled from watching the original, is seeing how over the top those performances were in a straight non-musical film. This time I was like, it still is big and over the top, and in that broad comedic sense. And I kind of was okay with it largely.
I guess I can see that. And, I'm probably hypercritical, but when I compare two actors that are known to be big and over the top, right? Nathan Lane and Will Ferrell. And I pretty much know what I'm going to get with Nathan Lane. And I was surprised with what I got with Will Ferrell, that his performance felt to me so much like that amped up stage performance. Even though I found him funny, I think what he delivered here as Franz was really funny. I think the contrast between the two, Nathan Lane felt like a stage, sort of a predictably big performance, and Will Ferrell's in some places felt over the top for me. And then now that I'm saying that out loud, it goes the other way. That in some scenes, Hold Me, Touch Me, I think Nathan Lane ends up being giving me a little too much. But I also think, again, this is proximity to the last film, which was full of, I think, so much more subtlety of the era.
And I speaking specifically to Will Ferrell, I think it's interesting that that's your comment, because I found his performance to be largely the same broad comedy that he's always doing on the screen, and he wasn't on stage. And so it's funny that he's a standout to you as being over the top, because I think that he's just being his typical screen
He's just
self.
being himself. Well, I think that's a great point. And I think that's why, to me, he comes off as a little bit over the top, because, in other performances, I think, Ula even, I think there's great risk for Ula to be one of those over the top performances. And I did not think that her portrayal here was over the top. Matthew Broderick is a sort of famously subdued performer, and I think when he's on stage, it feels really good. I mean, I think he brings he didn't feel over the top to me in this film either. So it's really, Will Ferrell's performances end up standing out, and I think probably for a number of reasons, because he represents something unique in comic culture right now, right, in terms of the gestalt of comedy and Funny or Die and SNL and the kinds of movies that he chooses to do, that he brings a lot of baggage to movies. And in this film, while I liked his performance generally, I laughed at it. It felt slightly jarringly out of place. I
agree.
I was girding for a fight.
No, it's interesting because he and Uma Thurman came in as the non Broadway substitutes, filling in for their parts, because I think that the person playing his part was cast in a different project. He had signed on to play actually Max on Broadway, so he had taken over for Nathan Lane, and ended up only having a cameo as the cab driver. As for Katie Huffman, who played Ula on stage, she just wasn't in the film at all, and they brought Uma Thurman in instead. Uma, I think, is great as Ula. I think actually her part is a much bigger part. There's a lot more to it, and I really liked her story and what they did with it. It's really hard looking at what Will Ferrell is doing here and not feeling like it's the same as every other big performance that he's done in the past. It's a Will Ferrell performance.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Will Ferrell, and I guess that's kind of part of my issue with it. Is it just feels like just another Will Ferrell performance. It doesn't feel like there's anything special to it for the film itself. And I don't know if that's completely fair, but that is kind of how it ends up coming across.
Well, in terms of how he uses some of the broadness that he brings to his performances, I think the music really kind of stands out. I mean, the Der Guten Tag Hauptklapp is wonderfully funny, and in terms of a kind of vaudevillian slapstick performance, and I think all three of these guys on that rooftop are really great and a lot of fun to watch. It's the stuff where we get close up on Ferrell's face, where he delivers his absolutely stock in trade Will Ferrell, that starts to feel a little bit overblown for the film. It is absolutely a matter of opinion here, and that I feel like it's overblown is an exercise in the contrast between, say, Will Ferrell and in this case the foil, who is Matthew Broderick in that scene, and I totally get how you others might love it, but for me, that sort of buffoonery is just a little bit too far.
Well, and it's funny because it's not like Kenneth Mars was a subtle performance. I mean,
I know. Why do I have that? What is the substantial difference between the two of them that I'm struggling with?
Well, for me, I just feel it just feels like Will Ferrell. It's just a straight up everything that I've seen Will Ferrell do type of performance, whether it's on SNL or any of the movies that he's been in. It's this type of performance, and so there's nothing special to it that defines Franz Liebkind. And and maybe it's just I haven't seen enough Kenneth Mars performances to be able to compare the two. I end up finding that he works because the performance that he gives as Franz in the original just feels like such a unique character because he's a much fresher face in my mind. And, I guess when I see him doing something like the inspector in Young Frankenstein, and I know he was in some other Mel Brooks movies that aren't coming to mind, but it does seem like he's doing the same broad comedy that Will Ferrell's doing. But yeah, so it's a tricky thing. I guess it's just that Will Ferrell just seemed to be just so Will Ferrell in it. And I guess that's, I don't know how fair it is to say, but it just ends up coming across that way.
Yeah, it doesn't feel fair.
Right.
but that's what it is, because you could really say the same thing about him. But what about Gary Beach? Because Gary Beach is as Roger DeBreeze is you could say the same thing. And I don't have that problem. I don't have that same problem with the entire Keep It Gay sequence where we're introduced to so many of the wildly over the top exaggerated stereotypes of homosexuality, just one after another, that are, I don't know. In this sequence, I'm okay with the humor, and I find myself laughing and enjoying the ride that they're taking me on, and the song is terrific.
I am too. And that's one of those tough things. I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be offended by this because it's so like over the top gay caricatures in so many different characters that are coming up on screen. But I know, I don't know how many of them, but I know a good number of these actors who are playing these characters are gay themselves. And so I'm like, well, they're playing it. So
if they're okay with it,
it's okay. I don't know. But I can see other gay people being offended by these stereotypes. But again, it's broad comedy. And I don't know, just like when you're making fun of cops in a broad comedy and they all have mustaches or something.
Yeah, they're all eating donuts. Yeah, and they all spill something on themselves in the car.
Right. It's the same sort of thing. And so I think it probably is easy to pull with the caricatures, but it ends up making a really funny song. Yeah. And then we have the lighting designer when she pops up. That just is another belly laugh from me. So
it is, and I think maybe that's the trick of this property is that it is able to it makes fun of everything, right? Not just lampooning Hitler. It's making fun of all the extremes in the ecosystem of stage production.
Right. Exactly. It really is kind of hitting at everything from the just Broadway and the Nazis and show business and just the producers, the accountants, the money man, everybody. I mean, it's not, we don't spend as much time with John Lovitz as the boss, but still, as the boss of the accountants, we're looking at him and making fun of him as well. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's just, they're laughing at everything and everybody. And I think it ends up being okay. And that's largely what I said last week too. I think it ends up working. And even though we're missing the LSD character here, we end up spending a lot more time with the gay characters. I think that it ends up, for me, it ends up working, and it ends up being okay.
The central, I know we want to talk more about some other folks in the movie, but in particular, but obviously the biggest difference between this film and the last film, so this as a remake, is that there's this interstitial remake in between that adds music to the whole thing, not just the stage performance. And so this is the thing that I have been most interested in hearing from you. What does the music add enough to merit a remake? Is it something that you felt like was earned, or is it just kind of an unnecessary thing?
I love, well, and this is funny because it brings up a question I asked you last week about movies adapted into musicals, and I should have clarified because my question really was non-musical movies that were adapted into Broadway musicals. And even then, as I was doing research on it, I still realized, there are so many more than I ever remembered. So it's not like this was an original idea, taking a straight film and turning it into a Broadway musical.
Right, because I think we came up with like The Lion King, but The Lion King was
that's
musical.
musical. And see, and that was the what I didn't phrase properly in the question last week. What I was thinking in my head was non-musicals that were turned into musicals. And
what'd you find? I mean, if you did your big fancy research, what's your? Because I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I can. There are a lot. And
you take my word for it.
Here, let me throw this at you. I think this would be a great list to put together for our Saturday matinee for this particular movie. So I was like debating, should
That's weird. I'm not available.
Yeah. Should I throw them out or should we save them?
Give me a sample. Give me a sample that's maybe wouldn't make it to your list.
Pygmalion turning into My Fair Lady.
Oh. All of a sudden, I see where we're going.
Yes.
I don't even need you to say anymore. Because now they're coming to me, and I want to save them for the list. You're absolutely right. There are probably more than we can count.
Yes, there are a hefty number of them.
Okay, so continue.
I think that what Mel Brooks did by turning it into a Broadway show was very smart. It allowed to expand the story. We got some additional elements. He changed the time period from the late 60s to the late 50s, which is why we dropped the LSD character and why he reworked it to have to have Fritz cast as Hitler and then Roger end up taking over for him, which I think ends up working out quite nicely. Although I do have a question about that I'll get to. But I think that the musical songs they're really strong. They allow for a lot of fun. They help the story along in fun ways. And I don't know, I felt like it opened up the story in ways that worked really nicely. Now, I haven't seen it on stage. I feel like I would probably prefer the stage version to the film version. My issue with the film version came because Susan Stroman, who ended up directing the show on Broadway, and obviously it was a huge success. It won 12 Tonys, more than any other Broadway show. It still holds that record. It just raked in oodles of money. And I'm assuming that Mel was so happy with all of the success of the show that he said, hey, let's make a movie, you direct it, and let her direct it. And I just feel like she's a stage director. And I feel like the musical numbers they look great, but they all feel like stage performances. And I felt like the direction outside of the musical numbers ended up feeling kind of flat. It just didn't sell me, or the way that Mel Brooks's direction did in the shorter 1968 version. He was a creative director, did some nice things and kept the pace up, and I just didn't feel like she did the same thing.
The way this landed for me, it felt like it didn't take any substantial new risks in the non-musical parts over what we already had in the original film. The apartment was very, very similar. The production design was very similar. It was an homage to the original. You could kind of feel it. I actually, my wife and I were sitting in bed last night as we were watching this, and she said, because she didn't get a chance to watch the other one with me, and she said, so which version is this? I said, great question. So we watched the entire sequence when they discover Springtime for Hitler, when, they're Leo and Max are reading scripts, and we went back and we watched the 68 version, and it is, these scenes are so close to how they are staged, how they're blocked, how they're directed, that you really feel that this was a missed opportunity to actually create a film of a great musical in the spirit of a modern movie musical that was just missed in the spirit, I think, of doing too much of an homage to, to what we didn't need to be homaged. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that's always the struggle when you are doing remakes and looking at the story. What are you going to do that's different other than just saying it's Hamlet and I've always wanted to play Hamlet?
Yes.
That
but
same
that's a
sort
different
of mentality.
case, right? Nobody's saying that about Max Bialystock.
Well, I would think that some are after seeing Nathan Lane do it, because he did such a good performance. I'm assuming on Broadway that some people are like, I totally want to play that part because it's fun and it's big and it gives me a lot to do.
But you can't put that in the same league as Hamlet.
No, you can't. but it doesn't end up making it something that warrants just kind of shaking it up and making a film out of it. And I guess that's my issue is, and I'm fine that they made a film of it, but I just felt like I may have just been watching a filmed version of the stage show.
Yeah, and I think principally I'm okay with that. And I think to me, I love the music. I really adore the music, and it is a well-earned experience, particularly the big numbers. I Want to Be a Producer is a fantastic number that is beautifully staged. Even if we take that it is, it's filmed like a stage piece, on a big glorious set, but a set that you can kind of imagine in the age of modern Broadway that they're doing something like this. I, like you, have never seen the staged version of this, but I love what they did with it. The file cabinets that open up, the way the accountants dance up on the desks. I love the comedy of the precision dancers. As we get the woman who is not meant to be a dancer.
Right. I love the staircase that has his name in lights as they're all coming dancing down it. I mean,
and all of the shows, Leo on Leo or Bloom in Bloom, all the names of the shows that he's going to do that are about him in lights. I think it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. You get that beautiful sort of classic mirror finished, black dance floor with all the lights. It looks pristine and perfect, and it really showcases the talent that Matthew Broderick is on stage, and for people who know him again principally as Ferris Bueller, he's an incredibly talented stage actor, and most of his career is doing stuff like this, so it's just a lot of fun to watch him do a kind of an old-fashioned movie musical.
Well, and that's what it ended up feeling like. It felt like an old-fashioned movie musical. Like the way that some of the dance scenes were shot just felt like they were just doing the head-to-toe shots, which is fine.
Right.
But and actually I appreciated that if that's what they were going for. But then every now and then they would cut in something that just didn't feel like it was doing that anymore, and it took away that head-to-toe kind of dance element. I'm like, why did they just cut that? Like, and that's my issue is I just felt like sometimes Stroman really did not know how to direct a film, and it ended up taking away some of that stage magic for me. And so I mean, it was fine. I still think that it's effective and fun, and it's a great story, and it's some great big performances, and so I have fun with it. I don't feel like it was directed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now all of that being said, I have a question, because this is it seems like a subtle change, but it ends up feeling like a bigger sticking point when Mel Brooks adapted it for the stage initially, because I'm assuming it's the same going from stage to this version. Mm-hmm. I think that when you have LSD playing Hitler, it ends up just working all the way through, and it all makes sense because he's such a crazy character that when it comes that he's the one who's playing Hitler, it turns into this farcical production and ends up making sense, and you can see why people are going to find it genius. My question is, in the remake, they cast Fritz as the lead. Now, the only reason that Roger ends up performing it is because Fritz falls off screen and breaks his leg, which is funny. But then we see the show, and Roger is actually perfect in the show for what the show is. How would that show have played if Fritz was the one who was the lead? And I don't think it would work. Like, I look at that, I'm like, it kind of all of a sudden becomes a nonsense production, because I can't imagine Fritz. And that was something I liked about the original, is that Fritz was really upset with how they were performing it. Here, Fritz clearly had been doing rehearsals because it's opening night and had seen how the show was going to go, and he was okay with it. And Roger obviously brings a whole other level of gayness to the role, but still, it's still the same show. And so I'm not sure that 100% makes as much sense as it did in the original.
And I wonder how they arrived at that point. It seems clear on rewatch that they needed to give him more Franz a couple of musical numbers, so we had to keep him, present in the story up to that point, knowing that he's not gonna do it because Roger just has to do it. I don't know. I don't know how the mechanics would work the other way, but I'm with you. It always feels like, whatever you think about about how it ended up, it always feels like a cop out to do, throwing Ferrell down the stairs. I've broken both my legs. I am not pleased with that gag every time I hear it.
And it's funny because it ends up feeling like Mel Brooks pulled it from Austin Powers, because Will Ferrell, his character has those, he dies off screen, and he's always like, I think I've broken my leg, but I'm going to, and it's all off screen.
Why have you shot me?
And it plays funny. And it's weird that it's Will Ferrell, because obviously I'm assuming this is how it was on stage and it wasn't Will Ferrell, but now it's Will Ferrell doing a Will Ferrell performance from Austin Powers here. I'm like, that's a very strange moment. And yeah, I almost wonder if it would have just made more sense if right out of the gate they just cast Roger or he cast himself to do it, because maybe he couldn't find the right Hitler. And maybe that would have just made more sense, because the show is designed really for him to do it.
It is designed for him to do it. It's funny with him in it. We knew it's coming, or maybe we didn't. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember not knowing that it was coming, so I guess I shouldn't say that. There's a bit, the break a leg bit is funny, right? Where they're going through and doing that whole song, and that's really funny. And there's a great great set of physical gags where you have Max, throwing the black cat under the ladder into the door, yelling "break a leg." There's funny stuff going on.
Yelling
in there.
"Good luck."
Or yelling "good luck." I mean, yeah, right. Good luck. It's really very funny. But leading that into the big central transition, it feels like a cop out. It feels like a mechanical twist that we just had to get in there without thinking, maybe far enough ahead.
It's one of those changes that they make to this that I struggle with. And they made a lot of the changes, the bulk of the changes, other than obviously adding the music, really comes at the end of the story. Fritz does not, they don't put this whole plan in place of blowing up the theater. And then Max gets arrested with Fritz, and Leo and Ula run off to Rio, which is kind of an odd twist that I didn't see coming. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It did start feeling like it was getting longer, like the film was dragging on a bit, though. And
that's okay. So interesting thing. You when you did the name of Ula last week, I didn't say anything, but in no place last week do we see that they got married, right? In the 68 version?
No, and I even looked in the script because I said that, and then I'm like, I wonder where that came up. And I think that
you said, I think they got married. Yeah.
I think somebody added that to like the wrong Wikipedia page or something.
Yes.
Because that information,
yes, I think so.
It's not in the 68
It's not accurate.
Version. You're right.
Right.
Exactly.
It's only in this version, and it plays well. But what did you think about that? I mean, did that hit you straight?
It felt by that point like this is now playing out the way that a Broadway show needs to play, where there's that rift between our heroes. Leo disappears with Ula and has that whole Rio song. You get the 11th Hour song from Max about being betrayed, and only to find redemption with Leo when Leo comes into the courtroom for that final speech, and they have that song together. By that point, it ended up feeling very expected, and it probably did on Broadway too. But again, it's Broadway, and it's just kind of a pattern that Broadway shows have. Here on screen, it just felt like it was bogging down a bit.
I struggle with it because for a couple of reasons. First, I prefer how tight the 68 version is that just gets us to the end. The entire end sequence here is way too long for me. By I don't know, a half hour, it just feels too long. Max's recounting of the entire story is a song that I find insufferable. Like I just can't get through it. I need to move on. I love the production design. The jail cells are cool, but the song is, I don't get its purpose as a recap, other than to allow the actor to show off, and it's just too fast. There's too much. It's too long.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the Rio thing, I didn't need to go to Rio. I think they took us to Rio, and it's a distraction. What I really wanted to get is let's just get to court. Let's get to court and have the entrance, and even put a title card up that says 6 months later or something like that. Whatever, just move along. It was just too much. So I think the music is well earned. I think it's a fun movie, if not as strong as last week. But the final act, it feels so much like a stage denouement that it probably would work much better on stage. It just doesn't work in the movie for me. I struggle with it, and that's not when I want to start feeling, edgy. Is at the end. I want to be feeling great with the rest of the characters, and in this movie, I struggle with it.
I would think that in a film version of this, like we would get the an issue I have with the way that it's structured is Leo has no logical reason to change his mind and come back. We don't see that change in him, that final bit of growth in his character arc, where all of a sudden he realizes that Max is a friend and he comes back. And so it ends up feeling like this kind of forced surprise to have him show up and sing this song. And yes, it's great and everything. And I feel like maybe it worked on stage, but in a film version, I'd want to see a little bit of that struggle that Leo's having in Rio, and really thinking about this dilemma and finally making this decision. And I think that would maybe have helped a little bit, even if it did make it longer, but I felt like it's one of those things that would actually have strengthened it.
Yeah, I'm prone to think of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which was another great movie that was turned into a fantastic musical about really not great people. And they do a lot of this, moving around and bringing people back in after having changes of hearts, and it's done in such a smart way that you don't actually need to see some of the changes of hearts or some of the changes of perspective. It happened off screen, but it erupts through song in a way that feels earned, and that's something that's missing, I think, in this bit, the Rio bit.
Yeah, and we get like three oddly placed, I guess I'll call them cameos right at the end, that just feel like thrust upon us very suddenly. That just, I'm like, why are these people all of a sudden showing up at this point in the movie? It just was a little much to me. We have David Huddleston, Michael McKean, and
in the prison.
Well, Michael McKean's in the prison. David Huddleston is the judge. And
right.
Then what's his name? Richard Kind is the jury foreman.
That's right. What are these guys doing here?
Yeah.
It is a star-studded final 5 minutes.
Right. That's what it felt like.
Okay. What do you think about the fact that they're we actually see what happens outside of prison, right? They're released and they become producers again, and this time they're actually doing something well. I mean, not producing, but
they're still terrible producers. And I struggled with the fact that the randomness of that moment when, you're so wonderful, they're freeing you. Like, yeah. Okay, but they're still like awful producers. They're putting together a terrible plan. They're going to run into the exact same problem. Like, how is this showing any sign of success? I struggled with that. I struggled with that last bit. And I feel like it would have worked better if we just saw them performing the show in jail. Like they said, next week we're in Leavenworth. Okay, let's go to Leavenworth. We'll watch them perform it.
Or even make that the end. next week we're in Leavenworth, you know, get on, let's go, boys. Whatever.
Right.
It just felt like too much. Too many jumps, too many moves, too many jumps. One of the things we talked about last week is breaking the fourth wall. They do it subtly in the movie in 1968. It changes tone here.
Well, and I guess that's a musical thing, right? But it's interesting to see because Mel Brooks used it in the original to have Max Bialystock talk to us briefly. Here we have, in that exact moment, he doesn't break the fourth wall. In fact, we don't have the fourth wall breaking until Matthew Broderick is singing That Face with Uma. And he is singing to camera. And that's one of those musical moments where he's singing to camera, breaking the fourth wall. And by doing so, she's not hearing him, right? It's like now we're inside his head. So it's actually a real fourth wall usage, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then, of course, you have that great little bit at the end, which felt like a nod to Ferris Bueller, which is kind of fun when they're all talking, looking at us. So.
Oh, you mean this is the post-credits?
The very end, post-credits.
Yeah, right. I want to go back to That Face, which I just nod to the production design and general production of that musical number, which I thought was a real standout piece. It was beautifully shot. It was beautifully choreographed. The color of her in that blue dress.
Uma. Yeah.
Oh, the costume on Uma and that costume change, right?
Yeah.
That was lovely.
Beautiful blue dress.
Her dress goes from something just around at the knee to that beautiful, long, flowing, multi-layered thing that just became such a showpiece of the era of the late 50s of movie musicals. I mean, I just thought it was a real bell ringer.
Definitely.
What's your favorite song?
Ooh, it's hard to not say Keep It Gay because I think that number is just so funny. I had just a laugh a minute with that song. But Springtime for Hitler, I thought they did a great job with that, blended with Heil Myself.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say Springtime for Hitler, which was the only music that was actually in the original version.
Right.
Yeah.
But they expanded it by kind of adding that Heil Myself and the reprise and all of that together. I just think they did a nice bit with it. But I mean, all of it, really. I mean, We Can Do It, I thought was a nice duet between Max and Leo.
And lovely that they end up being, on the fountain. Again, we get that little reprise of that, as they shot that again. That was lovely. I think when you got it fought, it was wonderful. Especially that the way they set it up, I heard somebody yell at me across the street when You Got It Flaunted, and I was inspired to write this song yesterday, and here it is. I thought that was really great, especially the way they go into it, where she goes over to give herself a key on the piano, and she hits one note, and the whole chord plays. Like they're just leaning into the fact that we have a magic orchestra, and I just am so tickled by some of those little beats.
And I love, I think of Franz's songs. I definitely prefer the Deutsche Band song that he does as his performance.
Gehört, ist a Deutsche Band.
Yeah, with the big, with the big boom. It was a very fun one. So it
was very fun and totally sells the Broadwayness of it.
Yes.
I think that again for me the highlight is going to be. I want to be a producer that's such a showstopper. But I'm sold by flashy lights and things. So
it's a big number, and they do a great job with it. And I thought they it's nice the way that one blends with the whole accounting world. That whole unhappy.
Oh, so good. It reminded me so much of Joe versus the Volcano. Right? You have those wonderful musical cues. It just felt very familiar.
Yep.
And that Nathan Lane was in Joe versus Volcano. I couldn't stop thinking about that.
And I couldn't stop thinking that the two of them were in Lion King together.
Exactly. That's really funny. I don't think I didn't. It took me a long time to make that connection in particular. Yeah. That's funny. Can you tell me something? I know that you have a real critical eye for this stuff. When you look at effects work in musical theater, where do you stand on robot pigeon puppets? You feel good about those? How do you feel about the Sieg Heil puppet pigeon?
I thought they were so dumb. I just did not need them. If that's what Susan is going to bring to the table, to change things up a little bit, it just, get rid of it. It just didn't work at all for me.
You know what? I was watching this movie and I had not seen your notes yet. And I mean, I'll just say, Andy wrote literally in the note that we share for the show, he wrote, "Man, do I hate pigeon puppets." And I could have written that myself as I was watching the movie. I'll bet pigeon puppets saluting is driving Andy batty.
And what's funny is those are Henson puppeteers doing the work here. And the work just felt kind of sloppy and stagey, and it just didn't work. And it's just like, was asking myself, why did we have to go to this level? Because it's so dumb. Ugh.
It was dumb, but it had to have been dumb by intention. I mean, this is a thing they wanted to. That they were just. But not trying to be dumb.
But what's the benefit? I just didn't see any benefit to doing that. I ended up finding that the pigeon element was I don't know. It just felt kind of like a much lower level comedy than some of the other stuff. Although Mel Brooks does the voice of the pigeons.
Yes.
And the cat.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He's very good. You wanted to talk more about Susan.
I just thought it was really interesting. So Mel Brooks originally hired Susan and her husband, Mike Ockrent, to do the Broadway show. Mike was hired to direct it, and she was hired to be the choreographer. Well, as it turns out, he ended up dying in 1999, and she agreed to take on both roles. And so she did the directing and choreography for the Broadway show, which is probably another reason Mel loves her so much. And that's really kind of all she did. I mean, all she did to kind of get signed on to direct the feature version. And it's interesting. I wish that I found her to be a stronger director. The choreography in the film was fantastic, though.
Yeah, it was lovely. Clearly a strength.
Yes, definitely.
We've already talked about Mr. Lane and Mr. Broderick and Ms. Thurman.
I just want to say about the two of them that they are playing two characters that are very big. And we talked about what Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder were doing last week and how big they were and the great way they played these characters. They're really hard characters to do that differently when it's a remake. But I do feel as I watched this that both Nathan and Matthew were still bringing some unique things to the parts. And I enjoyed that. Even when it's Matthew as Leo kind of pulling out his little blue blankie and rubbing it under his chin and everything. It's like the exact same stuff, but I still felt like there was enough of Matthew coming through. He was doing something a little different that made me end up really appreciating what these two were doing here.
Yeah, it didn't, I struggled a little bit this time shaking Wilder from my mind. Nathan Lane, I think, is enough of he's an eraser pounding kind of a performance, right? Yeah. I mean, you watching Nathan Lane, you just sort of are able to clear the slate of the former experience. I didn't think of Zero Mostel at all. It took me a little bit to shake Wilder out of my head. Particularly the, I'm wet and I'm in pain, that the whole sequence when he's doing sequences that were defined so critically by Gene Wilder's performance in the sequence. Right. It's hard to not see Broderick playing Leo as Wilder or Wilder as Leo. And, but generally I like him so much that he always gets the benefit of the doubt for me. And, and I think ultimately the way the film plays out, he's just a lot of fun to watch. And Uma Thurman, I mean, did you expect this from Uma Thurman when she comes on stage?
No, I was really surprised. I've seen her in the posters and all the marketing material, and so I was like, of course they're going to cast Uma to be the big Swedish bombshell. But she actually carried it really well. She does the accent well. She does the singing and dancing really well. Susan actually commented on that. She said she was really lucky that Uma had done the Kill Bill movies before this because it made her really limber, and she was able to really kind of just move her body to do all the things that needed to be done to make it work. And I mean, I just thought she was really enjoyable in the part, and I was excited to see Uma performing like this. And man, did it really stand out how tall she is when she stood next to Matthew and Nathan.
She is really, really tall. She's really tall.
Yeah.
Do you know how tall? How tall is Uma Thurman? She's 1.83 meters tall.
That's what I was going to say.
6 feet tall or 1.83 meters. How about this? How tall is Matthew Broderick? How tall is Matthew Broderick? Do you want to guess?
5'6".
5'8".
5'8", okay.
5'8". How about Nathan Lane?
5'9".
You think he's taller than Broderick?
He looked a tiny bit taller.
Well, you're wrong. He's 5'5".
Okay. So he's shorter.
Look at that. So there you go. But she's 6'8", 5'8". Yeah, I guess she's tall. She's tall and in heels.
When she comes out and she like toward the very end, the last,
it feels like she's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, the last scene of Springtime for Hitler in the reprise, and she comes out on stage when all the stormtroopers are out there. I swear, she looks like her legs are a mile long. The way that she's wearing the heels and doing the little kicks and everything, it's crazy how just tall she looks.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how tall Will Ferrell is?
How tall is Will Ferrell?
Well, he's 6'3", Andy, so I'm so glad you asked. He's 6'3".
How tall is Gary Beach? Because he's also tall.
He is also tall, and I will vamp for just a minute and say that Gary Beach is, it doesn't even say. It doesn't. He's 5'10". He's 5'10".
Okay.
Yeah, he's not that tall.
Gary Beach.
What do you think of the Stormtrooper thing?
Gary Beach, I just have to say, was an absolute treasure. Yeah. And sadly, I read that he passed away this past July.
He did.
That made me sad to read.
I just wanted to say about that, the Stormtrooper bit at the end.
Yes.
I found that much more impactful than the Stormtrooper bit in the original film. I think the way they architected the Stormtroopers coming out on the black stage with the mirror up above them so you could actually see the swastika, I thought that was clever and beautiful and haunting and just intimidating.
A couple points. They cast only men who are exactly 6 feet tall to play the Stormtroopers. So Uma actually could have been one.
She could have.
And that was a one element where I felt like Susan was doing something interesting with the directing, but that's because she was doing an homage to Leni Riefenstahl and the Triumph of the Will, with the way that Lenny captured some of those low Dutch angle shots of the stormtroopers walking by. And Susan does that here and captures that exact type of shot, which looks really nice and creative until you realize, she's just paying homage to those other ones. But it worked, and that's why it worked so well for Lenny.
Whoever did it, Andy, it's stunning.
It's still stunning.
Who else do you want to talk about?
Roger Bart was great as Carmen Gia. Some really strange and odd things coming out of his mouth, the way that he was doing that performance, but I ended up enjoying it. It was just so big and strange. But the one that I really wanted to point out is Jim Borstelman. And this is something that you get a lot in theater, where an actor will play a number of different roles. In the case of Jim Borstelman, he actually plays 4 roles in the film. He plays Scott the choreographer, which is really funny. He plays Donald Dinsmore, and Donald Dinsmore is the one who comes to audition that does, I'm going to do the little wooden boy. And he does the little dance with his arms pinwheeling around and stuff. And the glasses, like the real awkward looking guy. He plays a little old lady. And at the beginning of Springtime for Hitler, he plays the Bavarian peasant, who's the one kind of the main guy in the center singing the opening number.
That's fantastic.
And then speaking of little old ladies, there were 83 people performing as the little old ladies when they do their big song and dance number, as compared to 55 stormtroopers or 29 accountants. There were
if
just
only
so
the
many
little old ladies would have risen up against the Nazis, is what we're saying.
Exactly.
That's the joke here. How'd it do in award season? It did so well on stage to get any attention for the movie.
This unfortunately did not get recognized nearly like the stage version did. Although it did still have one win and 17 other nominations. The one win was at the Hollywood Film Awards, where Matthew Broderick won Supporting Actor. Some of the nominations, over at the Golden Globes, it was nominated for Best Musical or Comedy, and it lost to Walk the Line. Nathan Lane was nominated for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy. He lost to Joaquin Phoenix. And Will Ferrell was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but lost to George Clooney in Syriana. Also, the original song, you know how they like to do it, where you have a Broadway show and then they adapt it. Well, you always have to add a new song just so you can get a nomination for it. That's what Mel Brooks did here. He wrote the song There's Nothing Like a Show on Broadway, which is the one that kicks off the end credits. Mm-hmm. Got a nomination for that song here, but lost to the song A Love That Will Never Grow Old from Brokeback Mountain. Some of the other awards, this I think might be telling, over at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards. I love their category names. Worst Sense of Direction, parentheses, stop them before they direct again. Susan Stroman was nominated, but lost to Uwe Boll for Alone in the Dark, which Matthew Broderick, sadly, was nominated for Worst Actor, but lost to Jamie Kennedy for Son of the Mask. Worst song or song performance in a film or end credits. Gary Beach for the song Keep It Gay lost to Jessica Simpson singing for the movie Dukes of Hazzard. These Boots Were Made for Walking. And they have the Less Than Dynamic Duo Award. Not Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick were nominated, but they lost to Samuel L. Jackson and Eugene Levy for the film The Man, one I completely forgot about. And last but not least, the worst remake. They lost that award to Yours, Mine, and Ours.
Okay, see, I think we should take it as both a sign that they were in that particular running for all of those awards, and that they lost all of those awards. I think it says exactly where this movie is going to be remembered.
I think you may be right.
How to do at the box office.
Susan Stroman's adaptation of Mel's musical stage adaptation of his 1968 movie cost $45 million to make, which is about $55 million in today's dollars. The movie had a limited release on December 16, 2005, before opening wide on Christmas Day, opposite The Ringer, Spielberg's Munich, Cheaper by the Dozen 2, Fun with Dick and Jane, Memoirs of a Geisha, and Brokeback Mountain. With the glut of films of the holiday season, and King Kong still smashing the box office, this didn't have a chance to take the weekend, coming in 14th place. And unfortunately, it seemed like audiences just were not craving another telling of Bialystok and Bloom, as the movie only went on to make $19.4 million domestically and $18.6 million everywhere else, giving it a total gross of $46.8 million in today's dollars. That leaves the movie in the red, and it lands with an adjusted loss per finished minute of 69.4 thousand. It's a stumble for the film, but that doesn't make it too bad. And if it's anything like its predecessor, it'll continue to have a long life. Plus, if Mel and his producers behind this are anything like they are in the film, they intentionally made it a flop, right? And they're enjoying the riches in Rio right about now.
Look at you reading into things and making a funny, Andy. That was good.
It's all meta.
It's all meta. It's the circle of life. Can I just say, we talked a little bit about the post-credits. My favorite post-credits thing, it's actually just at the end of the actual credits, is Will Ferrell, ironically, who is singing. And then he whispers to the audience,
right.
Don't forget to buy Mein Kampf in paperback, available near you at Borders Books or Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. Guten Tag. I live for that bit. It is really funny.
That is pretty funny.
This movie for me sits in that kind of that Casablanca zone that I might not like it if I gave it any thought. And now that I've seen these back to back, I can tell you that I'm listening to the music. Definitely had the soundtrack or had the original Broadway soundtrack in rotation today. But when it comes to watching the movie, I think I'm going back to 68, and makes me curious how it's going to stack up between us.
I am very curious myself.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies that we've talked about on this show. If you swipe over in the show notes or head over to the website, look at the notes there for this episode. Really, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But if you hit the word Flickchart in the notes there, it'll take you right over to this movie in Flickchart where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, we have The Producers, or Numi, the girl with the dragon tattoo. How about this? We've got a remake versus an original.
I am going to go with Numi.
Me too. The Producers, or La Femme Nikita, another one that was an original.
It's Kismet.
It is.
I think I'm also going to go with La Femme Nikita.
I'm going to go with The Producers.
Really?
Yeah.
Like how hard? How hard are you doing that?
Hard enough.
Okay. All right. I'll give it to you.
Okay. The Producers, or Labyrinth. There's one that's not has not been remade.
There's a reason.
Oh, wow. I'm going to say Labyrinth.
I'm going to go with The Producers. I'm going to go with The Producers, and I'm going to take you to the mat, Andy.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Rock.
When you got it, flaunt it.
The Producers, or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana
the Last
Jones.
Crusade.
The Producers, or The Great Wall. I can't wait for the musical Broadway show of that.
Musical Great Wall. I can't wait till they jump. I'm going to say The Producers.
The Producers. The Producers, or Howl's Moving Castle.
Howl's Moving Castle, please.
I will go with Howl. The Producers, or Once Upon a Time in America. I will say The Producers.
I will say The Producers.
The Producers, or Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams, please.
Did we really talk about Field of Dreams on this show? seems like another me.
It was so long
ago. I'll also say Field of Dreams.
Well, that lands The Producers remake at 224 out of 382 on our chart, which is about a 41%.
Well, that's interesting. I feel like that feels pretty good to me, even though it landed a little bit higher on my own chart. I ranked it. It came in right about 492 out of 1,052, which is at 53%. What did it do for you?
I landed at 1,781 out of 4,061, which is about a 56%.
Look at that.
Yeah.
It's right smack dab in the middle. Now, if I'm supposed to go by the algorithm that Flickchart suggests that I use for ranking this thing in other places, it should be at 2.5 stars, right smack in the middle, out of 5 stars at letterboxd.com/thenextreel. Does that feel right to you?
It feels low to me.
Feels a little low to me.
I still enjoy it. I mean, I have issues with it, but I just enjoy the story, and I really enjoy the songs and the musical numbers. I thought they did a great job with that. So I'm at 3.5 and a like.
Yeah, I think that's about right for me too. It surprises me that you are right there. I would have expected you to be lower, but for me, it is definitely a like, just for the music alone. And I was thinking about 3.5 or 4 stars. I think on this watch, and particularly influenced by my experience with the last movie, I'm going to stick with 3.5 stars.
Yeah.
Well done. So that's it. That is it for our Producers movie and its remake. I think that means we're done with the movies and their remakes for this year.
Right. It closes out this series, and we're going to be moving on. We're still continuing our celebration of films from 1968, celebrating their 50th anniversaries. Next up, though, it will be a chance to look at the films that were nominated for Best Picture in 1968. We've already talked about Funny Girl, and so now we have the remaining 4 nominees for Best Picture, which are Lion in Winter, Oliver, Rachel, and Romeo and Juliet.
Is this the first time we've done this in all these years? Do a whole year of Best Pictures?
It is. We've celebrated years before, but never have we specifically looked at just like nominees for Best Picture.
That's good. That's going to be fun. I look forward to that. And we've had people tell us that we need to do this, that this is a year we need to do in particular. So I'm looking forward to it. It feels like a good way. And we should also say this is the end of our 1968 exploration. And so
it is
right. This series kind of is the end of our half year 1968 playtime.
Yeah, this series will take us. We'll be crossing over from 2018 to 2019 by the time this series is over, and then we'll be starting something new, and we will not be journeying into films from 1969.
that would be
not doing another
podcast.
50th anniversary celebration.
No, we are not. I'm done with that.
Well, everybody, if you want to hear more of us, but you can't wait until next week's show, you can support us over on patreon.com/thenextreel, and you can get access to our exclusive members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee.
We talk about movie news and new trailers, and we go head-to-head in our weekly challenge in which we put together lists of movies related in some way to the movie we're discussing that week.
There are all sorts of other goodies, too, if you support us at different levels. Just head over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
You can learn more about us and check out the detailed show notes at thenextreel.com.
You can subscribe for free in your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at The Next Reel.
And if you want to get into the conversation yourself, join our Discord channel for a whole lot of movie chat with movie lovers from around the world. You can find the link to join in the show notes or on the website.
The Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Stephen Smart running Instagram.
Ben Lott runs all things Twitter.
And thanks to Eli Catlin, who graciously allows us to use his song Ragtime Instrumental as the theme to the show. You can find out more about Eli on his SoundCloud page.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel this time. Andy did a lot of vileness of people who just don't like this movie. And really question the existence of the performers and creators in it.
Boy, do they.
Amazon really brought its A game today. I'm going to go down to a 1 star from Jeannie, who says that she wishes that she could give it no stars.
Oh, Jeannie.
I guess the objective of this boring ham fest was to create a cult classic like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, because this movie sucks dishwater. A few funny moments that were not worth the wait by any means. Highly disappointed. Was expecting more from this cast. Maybe I could have gotten into it if I had seen it at midnight in a theater filled with water pistol-toting drag queens in party hats. But I doubt it. Let me know when you have audience participation in costume contests for this one. To be fair, I'll lick her up and give it another shot. No stars.
Oh my.
5 people have found this review helpful.
I think that's an interesting way to pitch a 1-star rating is, I'll watch it again if it becomes another Rocky Horror.
Exactly. I'll get drunk. I'll bring my water pistol. Right.
That's very funny.
What do you got?
Well, I've got a 1 star by Deep Six, who says, pathetic example of a remake. I made 2 colossal mistakes concerning this movie. The first mistake was buying it, and the second was watching it. It is a remarkably bad example of a remake of a classic movie. Nathan Lane is a pale comparison to Mostel, and Broderick, well, comparing him to Wilder would be sacrilege.
Oh.
And 6 people found that one helpful. But yeah, at least Deep Six is very clear on the mistakes made.
Yes, very clear. And that he was sober the whole time.
Sober the whole time. There you go.
Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great movies, so many great conversations. But it's a lot of work. Producing this show week after week does require a lot behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We had some great films in Season 8 that started their lives as books or plays, and you can find all of them on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
That's the site where listeners can find links to purchase all the source material behind the adapted films we covered, from Season 1 up through our current season.
For part of Season 8, we had a series celebrating the 50th anniversary of films from 1968.
We talked about 2001 and 2010 for our Odyssey series, both adapted from Arthur C. Clarke's novels. Man, the second one was so much better than the first, right?
Don't you even get me started. Need I bring up Under the Cherry Moon again?
Yes, also so much better.
Wait, no, that's not what I...
Planet of the Apes kicked off its series based on the novel by Pierre Boulet.
We covered Danger Diabolic and The Detective, adapted from novels for our 1968 crime films.
Wait, wasn't that The Detective the prequel to Die Hard?
They were both written by Roderick Thorpe, and yes, it's the same character in the books.
I can't believe they even asked Sinatra if he'd be in Die Hard. That would have been weird.
Once Upon a Time in America was part of our Leone Once Upon a Time trilogy, adapted from Harry Gray's novel.
And we looked at 1968 Best Picture nominees The Lion in Winter, Rachel, Romeo and Juliet, and Oliver!
We also had an Ingrid Bergman series with adaptations like Spellbound, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Murder on the Orient Express, and Gaslight.
We haven't talked about Gaslight.
Stop gaslighting me!
Dive deeper into these books and more adapted films at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations that we've covered on all the Next Reel family of podcasts, and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.